And then I can share my screen. Okay. We by the way, we're making good progress on Hoshea. So, whoa, why did you? Sorry if it just did something. I don't know what's happening.
There we go.
Okay. Now you can see. Okay, great. I don't know what.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. We're making good progress. We're making good progress. Um, okay. So we're going to transition to talking about Yaakov, and actually this parak is the Haftorah for Parshat Vayetze, which is all about Yaakov leaving the home after he steals the bracha from Esav and going out on his own. So there's a lot of Yaakov references in this parak. So we begin with Sivavuni bechachash Ephraim uvemirma be Israel v'Yehuda od rad im el ve'im kedoshim ne'eman. So Ephraim surrounds me with deceit, the house of Israel with guile, but Judah stands firm with God and is faithful to the Holy One. Does that sound
That
accurate?
sounds good. Like
Mm-hmm.
similar to what we.
Similar. Okay. Mm-hmm. Um. Right here we've got that the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain, but if your translation sounds similar, then that's pretty good. Oh, and by the way, I should mention we saw that last week's chapter, right, was this like positive one and one of comfort, and it seems like okay, we're going back to the criticism now, and yeah, so that was a nice short-lived little break from it. Okay. um Ephraim ro'eh ruach verodef kadim kol hayom kazav bashod yarbe ubrit im ashur yichretu v'shemen lemitzrayim yuval. Ephraim tends the wind and pursues the gale. He is forever adding illusion to calamity. Now they make a covenant with Assyria. Now oil is carried to Egypt. Okay, so I'm curious. Ephraim ro'eh ruach. So here they translated it as tends the wind, just like ro'eh would be the word like shepherd or to
Like
tend to
a
the flock.
shepherd, right?
Right. So is that what you have also?
No, we have Ephraim embraces the wind, wind signifying nothingness, refers to Ephraim's idol worship.
Okay,
And
great.
then
So yes,
a
so
footnote.
it's whether it's ro'eh tends like a shepherd or ro'eh like re'ut friendship, right? Whether it's with you said embraces, right?
Right.
Right. So that's going to affect whether it's tends or embraces.
Yeah, and pursues the east wind all day. He increases, and then the falsehood and plunder. They seal a covenant with Assyria, and oil is transported to Egypt.
Yeah. Right, and Rashi says l'shem
It's
shochad,
similar,
right? The
really.
oil is a bribe,
Yeah.
is what Rashi says. So that's worse, obviously. Okay. Veriv Lashem im Yehuda velifkod al Yaakov kidrachav kema'alalav yashiv lo. God once indicted Judah and punished Jacob for his conduct, requited him for his deeds. All right. Do you have Reeve, I mean, as indicted also?
Yeah, God has a contention with Judah
Mm,
to visit upon Jacob according
yes.
to his evil ways.
Yes.
He will
Uh-huh.
requite him in accordance with his deed.
Mm. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, I think that makes more sense here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. And of course, this is where like, the Jacob part enters in. What happened? Babeten akav et achiv uveono Sarah et Elohim. Right. So in the womb, he tried to supplant his brother, right? Akav from, of course, from his name, literally holding on to Esav's heel. Right. And then grown to manhood. Curious what translation you have for that. He wrestled Eta Elohim, right? With here it's a divine being or with God, depending on how you want to translate that.
Yeah, we leave it pretty literal. In the womb, he seized his brother's uh, heel, and with his strength, he struggled with an angel of God.
So that's interesting with his strength, right? Here we have grown to manhood. Why did the JPS translate grown to manhood? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, I'm not sure. All right. The Yashar,
Does
excuse me.
does that, Ruth,
Yeah.
does Ona mean in his season? So grown to manhood was his season.
Oh, interesting. I believe that's with an ayin, but that's an interesting
Oh,
idea.
okay. My
Right.
spelling
No,
is
Okay. Doesn't it also mean strength? Okay. All right. Anyway, I'll look into it. Vayasar el malach v'yuchal bacha v'yitchanen lo beit el yimtzaenu v'sham yedaber imanu. So he strove with an angel, vayuchal, right? And prevailed. That's the same language that's in the Torah. Bacha v'yitchanen lo. The other had to weep and implore him. I'm curious if that is your translation also. At Beit El, Yaakov would meet him there to commune with him. What do you have for the translation for the rest of this?
In the rest of it, we have in Bethel, he will find us, and there he will speak with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's weird because here he's got that in Beit El Hashem would find him, found Yaakov. But so that, and that's what it would be. And that Hashem spoke to him in Beit El. So, so I wonder who the him is. Who's the lowercase him? What? I'm looking at the GPS. All right. I don't know. Hey. All right. The Hashem Elokei Tatzvakot Hashem Zichro. Right. So here we have this pasuk is just the names of God, right? The Yud K Vav K, which is a name of like Rachamim, of mercy. And then Elohei Tzvakot is like, that means God of hosts, connotes more judgment. And then Hashem again as mercy, and Zichro. How do you have this verse translated?
Hashem is the God of legions. Hashem is his remembrance.
Yeah, man, we should do a whole class just on why did the JPS say what it said. Okay, yeah, that is definitely what the pasuk means, literally. Hashem Zichro.
Zichro would seem like remembrance.
I know. Why does it keep doing this to me today? It's like so bad. I don't know. I can't explain it. Okay. All right. Ve'ata be'elohecha tashuv chesed u'mishpat shemor ve'kaveh el Elohecha tamid. You must return to your God. Practice goodness, right? Chesed and justice, and constantly trust in your God. Right? That's a concept. Chazak ve'ametz libecha ve'kaveh el Hashem. Right? Constantly trust in God. So it seems like it comes in contrast to 7 to 6, right? And so I think there's a question of what is this vav here? Is this an and, or is it like a is it a vav of contrast, right? As opposed to Yaakov, as opposed to Hashem, you Ephraim, right? Do this, or is it like what is it talking about here? My guy says Gam ata Yisrael to chalim, so like you could find reward in serving God, right? The implication is, but you don't currently, right? But the possibility is there.
In our translation, the vav is translated as and.
Wait, so what's the rest of it?
And as for you, return by your God, observe kindness and justice, and always hope to your God.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. Now I'm curious also for what you have for Canaan here. So Canaan biyado me'oznei mirma la'ashok, excuse me, ahev. So there's a question of, do you translate this as Canaan, like Canaan, or a traitor? So here clearly JPS says traitor, a traitor who uses false balances, who loves to overreach. What do you have as a translation?
But you are instead a traitor with scales of deceit in his hand, who loves to cheat.
Yes, cheat. Yeah, I don't know why here it's overreach, right? Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Right. And here, by the way, how does my guy deal with this? He says, Ephraim niyad lichanaan. So Ephraim is like a trader, the socher ve'oseh ma'aseh Canaan, like a trader, a merchant, who does these things. And the question, I guess, is like, is it? And he says, Canaan shem ha'am, right? This is the name of the nation. So I guess they would cheat on things, is what we are alleging. But some people, what I'm trying to say is translate it with the sense of the original Canaanite also, or is it just a traitor that is, nationless?
Well, it's a great sin to have balances that are not true. I mean, we know that it's because you're deceiving the person you're doing the trade with, and so it's not something to be taken lightly. This is something very serious.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, right. You're right. I mean, it's a real allegation for sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying with the stuff with Yaakov, it's curious why we're now contrasting with Yaakov. Like, sort of, where did this come from? So now, because we continue, Vayomer Ephraim, Ach asharti matzati on li kol yegi'ai lo yimtzeu li avon asher chet. So Ephraim says,
Hi.
Hello. Oh,
Hey, how are you?
Ephraim says, I have become rich, right? Asharti, I have gotten power, right? On, we saw a couple psukim before, the strength, right? So Ephraim says, I've done this all myself. Kol yigi I lo yimtzeuli, right? All my gains do not amount to an offense that is real. So we know that one of the big no-nos from the Torah is to say, right? That it is the strength, my own strength, my own accomplishments that brought me success, right? To believe, to have faith in, no, I shouldn't use the word faith, right? To believe that anything you have is because of your own work.
Right.
An attitude I would argue is way too pervasive in our government at the moment, right? Is because of you, and to not have a sense of gratitude or humility about it is a huge offense to God, right? So this isn't a coincidence that this is to allege, to accuse Ephraim of saying this now.
It's kind of like the second paragraph in the Shema, when the where it says, don't turn to other gods, and don't think that you've accomplished this by yourself.
Sorry, I'm just saying in my head. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that it's like, this has been a lot of my frustration. I mean, just my wonderment, over the past number of months, is just this attitude is considered so toxic in the Torah. One must always conduct themselves with the humility and understanding and awareness that whatever we have is temporary. It could be gone at any moment. It is not because you're so great or so smart that you have it. And that should really affect how you conduct yourself. and how the world conducts itself also, I would argue as well, right? I mean, Shemitah is not a coincidence, right? Shemitah is, to me, like the most basic acknowledgement of that, because every 7 years you just go, okay, forget that, right? We had 6 years of seeing how things would go. We acknowledge that no way everyone's going to win, so we're going to just start over again. Yeah, so this is, I mean, certainly, like, I would consider this a huge insult if someone said this to me. So that is yeah, so that's we have here. I'm just looking super fast to see if my guy's got anything else that's good. Okay. Alrighty. ואנוכי השם אלוקיך מארץ מצרים עוד אושיבך באוהלים כימי מועד. So I, the Eternal, have been your God ever since the land of Egypt. Right, me'eretz Mitzrayim, from Egypt. I will let you dwell in your tents again. I mean, it's really, I will return you to your tents, as in the days of old. I want to see what they have here. Okay, right. Kime moed, like in the fixed season, in a fixed time. I want to look.
Yeah, I will yet settle you in tents as in the days of early times.
Right, here he says Kimei Midbar, because of course, like the Ohel Moed, the tabernacle, where they, Israel merited to have Gilui Shechina, right, the appearance, the revelation of the Shechina, of God's presence. So that's interesting. It's not us living in tents. The Ohel is just about the Mishkan and the relationship with God. Okay. Actually, wait, I just want to, did he say anything about Moed? No, he did not. Okay. V'dibarti al hanevi'im ve'anochi chazon hirbeti uveyad hanevi'im adameh. When I spoke to the prophets, for I granted many visions and spoke parables through the prophets. It's really not a complete idea, right?
Yeah.
What do you have a better translation?
Yeah. I spoke with the prophets and provided numerous visions, and through the prophets, I conveyed allegories.
Yeah, that's exactly what this guy says. Yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, all right, fine. I mean, to me, that seems like kind of a strange thing to say isolated, but sure.
And then I guess that's what parables would be. Yeah.
Right. Just like what role is this playing in this pursuit playing right here? If I remember, I will look back at some of the sources. I didn't have time to check and try to see what they say. Okay. Im Gilad Aven, this word keeps coming up. Ach shav hayu begilgal shvarim zibechu gam mizbechotam kegalim al talmei sadai. Excuse me, not Shaddai, Sadai. Okay. As for Gilad, it is worthless. Do you have that translation also, or do you have something else? Gilad Aven Ach shav.
Sure.
As
He spoke with the prophets, right? If Gilead suffered destruction, they were but vanity. In Gilgal, they slaughtered oxen. Indeed, their altars are like heaps upon the furrows of the field.
Okay, great. All right. So yeah, that sounds about the same here. Okay. All right. Now we come back to Yaakov. Vayvrach Yaakov stay Aram v'yavod Yisrael v'isha shamar. Then Jacob had to flee to the land of Aram, right? Literally to the fields of Aram. Is that what this says here? Okay. There Israel served for a wife. For a wife, he had to guard sheep, right? Because it just says shamar. It doesn't actually say sheep. Do you have anything different, Janet?
Not that different.
Okay. All right.
Ruth?
Yeah.
I have a question. We're sitting here and trying to translate and find a good translation and whatever. I wonder if the people then, you
Mhm.
know, was this kind of Hebrew, the spoken Hebrew that it was he was trying to, you know, address. Was he just trying to address the aristocracy, or was he trying to address all the people with this?
I'm
And would people have been totally in tune, understanding, or did they talk among themselves? Well, what did this mean, and what did this mean, and what trying to figure out. Um,
I'm so glad you asked that question because I wonder that all the time. Like
yeah,
I'll be
with all the
listening.
Nevi'im, it's very elegant language,
I know,
but it's not. It's certainly not the people's language.
I
And
know,
would
and
it, would they be able to relate to it?
I'll
Um,
be like listening to the OU. One of the things I listen to prepare is, the OU women's, they do a Nach thing. So they have a few
right.
broadcasts over the years of Hoshea. And they'll just say, and not badly, but with such confidence, like here, if like Hashem is comparing this to that and makes this beautiful allegory. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I totally didn't get that when I was reading it, and I wonder, right? Like, is it me? Is it
Well,
because I don't
maybe it's
speak this
our
language, or
Hebrew is not, we don't
I don't I know.
every day speak Tanakhi Hebrew. So I was wondering if their Hebrew was just so much,
I
um,
really
you know,
wonder. I
I don't
really
know what
wonder.
you've heard in the, you know, over the years,
It's such a good
being in
question.
your position, um, is just trying to stand back from it a little bit.
No, you're completely right. I mean, and it also it cross references other parts of Tanakh, but
Would
like,
they have known, at that time? And,
I
you know,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
remember Joe's Yoshiyahu who like finds the scrolls and
right.
is like, oops, there was a Torah, right? So I really, really, I wonder. I wish I had a better
Is there
answer.
anybody who you could ask, who you have access to that you could ask? And who are they? Were they really just directing it to the aristocracy?
Yeah.
Because the people like who are more powerful, who have
Mm-hmm.
more say and who might be more, um, have more elegant Hebrew.
Yes. Okay. Bli Neder, I need to remember. I'm gonna write. My dad is friends with Professor Ben Summer. Do you know who he is?
Mm-mm.
He does a lot of this stuff. I believe he's at JTS right now. Okay, I'm gonna ask Ben. I have his email somewhere. I'm gonna email him. Okay.
And where were all these Nevi'im trained to speak like this? You know?
Yes, it does seem like they had Navi apprentice camp or whatever, like where they
Yeah,
all
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
practiced. Yes.
yeah. I mean, it's really
Mhm.
elegant language and elegant, and
Yeah.
some of it is very esoteric that is hard to understand.
Well, I
But
know, right? I mean, I'm not the type of person. If Shakespeare walked down the street right now and started talking, I would not have a clue what he was saying, right? And I'm sure
right.
Janet is the type of person who I'm sure would understand every word, but I'm like, uh, yes.
So
So,
all these are questions, and
mhm,
I have another question,
mhm.
which is I don't know if I'm disrupting the flow of the class here.
No,
Okay. Um, the other question is, you know, do you think that, it seems like they didn't have much success
much
and
what?
success,
Oh, success. Yes.
the Nevi'im,
Yeah. Yeah.
they didn't impact so much. you know, and
Hmm.
you'd understand that somebody's just haranguing you all the time and saying, kind of very negative and giving you, that
Hmm.
you turn you get deaf to it
Yeah.
after a bit, you just uh,
It's interesting thinking about that. Like the who is the Navi who succeeds, and that's Yona, right? And yet Yona, it's such a, in some ways, some ways, like simple book that we can teach it to children, whereas like you can't teach Hoshea to anybody, right? You wonder.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I'll email Professor Summer. I'll see if he responds and what he has to say.
And Yeshayahu, though, I mean, some they have the future, they have their positives, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe they are getting through on that basis, but it's so negative. Didn't they think that maybe if they said, something a little bit more positive, or why don't you take a step toward this or a step
Mm-hmm.
toward that? And you hear some of the Gedolim later in the 19th, whatever, 18th, 19th century, talking about taking steps toward. I remember
Mm-hmm.
um, we had a shiur on tshuva that was about some of the 19th century Gedolim, and they
Mm.
were talking about taking steps toward tshuva. Not you don't have to do the whole way. You can you
Yeah.
just you have to be on the derech. You know.
Yeah, I mean, the human psychology of the Torah and the Navi is not great. It's just not great. Yeah, there's a lot of like, if you do this, it will be bad. There's not understanding, there's impatience. It's not great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway,
I'm really glad you asked that question because it's like sort of
it
been in the back of my
it
mind for
it, it
months.
it's been. I felt I could ask it to you.
Of course, yeah.
That um, without offending,
No, no, no. It's such a good question.
uh-huh.
And I think it's a critical part.
Oh, wait.
So,
Mm-hmm.
it's a critical part for me for um, um, attaching myself emotionally
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the Nevi'im,
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So
Yeah.
it,
So
Mhm.
thank you
No, thank
for
you.
your
I'll
for
When
report
your
back.
forbearance.
when you read Jonathan
Mhm.
Sacks' books, he always talks about the difference between the priest and the prophet. And
Mm.
the prophet is the one who's speaking in the moment. And the priest is the tradition that's going to be the same today and tomorrow and 1,000 years from now and so forth.
Mm.
Um, so if Hoshea is speaking, he's talking about the prophet, the role of the prophet,
Mm-hmm.
and what's going on right now
Mm-hmm.
versus and as a consequence of what's been going on versus what is just timeless and you know the service of the high priest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah, that's great.
so yeah, it makes me wonder, like, who are the prophets writing for? Who are
Right.
they thinking is their audience?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
that's what I was asking. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I'm thinking maybe it's their own thoughts that they're trying to share with other prophets or other scholars. I have a hard time thinking that they're writing for the average man.
Right.
Because I'm imagining at that time the average man was not educated. I mean, they could say prayers and you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and maybe that was it. They didn't have the luxury of studying. They had to survive and earn a
Yeah.
living.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking it's almost like writing a diary for other scholars to see at some point
Oh,
later.
interesting. Interesting.
Well, the prophet is the one who speaks truth to power, so
Right.
it's what he's saying is what's going on in the moment, but
Mhm.
also relevant to um redirecting people back to where they should be,
Mm-hmm.
versus the daily prayers that somebody might go through almost by rote.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I was imagining his talking to the aristocracy, you know,
Yeah.
with the people who have some power,
Mhm.
people who, you know, who
And
are, and maybe the money lenders and the,
Mm-hmm.
just the the people who have some power, and or maybe farmers who are not doing Shemitah, I don't know if they would have the language to understand, but that's another question. It's
Mm-hmm.
really a question for that it would pay to ask some really Torah scholars,
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
and
Definitely.
thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. I'll write to
I give
him
you
for
a
sure.
homework assignment. Yes, I agree with Charlotte. That
Mm-hmm.
you know that we need to, that it's not your average person. And
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte raised an interesting idea that maybe it was not for, that there may have been a part of it that was for posterity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never thought about that, but maybe that there's some of that. But obviously, it's truth to power now. But
Right.
maybe also thinking about posterity. I don't know.
Yeah, these are great questions. Yeah. Especially because I mean, like I think 14 is a really good example of that, right? Ubenavi ha'elah Hashem Yisrael miMitzrayim, ubenavi nishmar, right? But when God brought Israel up from Egypt, it was through a prophet. Through a prophet, they were guarded. So I'm curious what translation you have. Well, first, yeah, Janet, what do you have for this? 14?
Just 1 second. And by a prophet, Hashem brought Israel up from Egypt, and through a prophet, they were safeguarded.
Okay.
Mhm.
Right, exactly. So I like that this is and not but. That's what I was curious about, right? So here that but when God is here and when God, right? It's saying, the Exodus happened through a prophet. We're emphasizing that, right? Whereas, like, for example, with the Egel HaZahav, with the golden calf, then they look at Ela Elohecha Yisrael Asher Helucha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, they're replacing Moshe, right? That is God who took you out of Egypt, but Moshe is the God. It's very blurred. And the emphasis is like God took you out of Egypt. So with the question of like what's the goal, what's the agenda, in some ways I think you could argue this is an agenda driven pasuk. It's saying here Moshe was the Navi, of course, but okay, what's the point? That's not necessarily seen as like a positive for them. Yeah. All right. Although it could also be Venavi Nishmar. I'm just seeing now. My guy points out that maybe Nishmar means that add examples like the Egel HaZahav or the Meraglim, right? The spies, the prophet Moshe saved you, right? God wanted to destroy you, and
Well,
Moshe saved you.
well, maybe he's saying, you know, he's a prophet, and maybe he's just saying,
Mm-hmm.
um, making making a point about his own importance.
Right, right. Yeah, totally. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you don't compare yourself to Moshe. um, all right. So yeah. Okay. Hichis Ephraim Tamarim Vedamav Alav Itosh V'cherpato Yeshiv Lo Adonav. So Ephraim gave bitter offense, and his Lord cast his crimes upon him, and he requited him for his mockery. I've got to think there are other translations of this pasuk. Right, bitter offense. Okay, that matches with this guy. But in his Lord, V'damav alav itosh. Onish Dmei Hanikim Sheshafach Ephraim. Right, the capital.
Yeah. But for 14, going back to that,
Mm-hmm.
during the 40 years in the wilderness, God, through Moses, protected them from all their enemies. But instead of showing gratitude, Ephraim angered him. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's again thinking they did everything for themselves rather than they did it with the help of Hashem that was protecting them
Mm-hmm.
through the righteousness of Moshe.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
said, if you're gonna write these people, off, when he's talking about the golden calf, then write me out of your book. And,
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he was certainly one who, even when the people were sinning, he was still trying to protect them from God's wrath.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And now, right, and they totally made God super angry, and now it's payback time. Mm-hmm. But I do find like the through line of Yaakov, Moshe, now contemporary for the book, very interesting. An attempt to connect it to the past that we haven't really seen much of until now. It's interesting. Yeah, and I just really like your points about how much connection do they have to that history? How much reverence would they have for it? Does it mean anything? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Is that really the best way to
Obviously,
forget
they
them?
didn't listen.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, so not that much.
the question about how much did they understand, or
Mm-hmm.
it's, if they did understand, they didn't listen. And
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good point.